Good afternoon. Slow day at the newsroom today, right? Nothing going on. Nothing going on. Nothing at all. But I'm glad you took time to come and see me. As you know, we're coming down the home stretch. 6 or 7 days to go here, and I'm pleased with generally how we're getting things done here with the legislature and the budget and all things associated with that. So, without further ado, let me just open up to questions.
Governor, Mitt Romney had quite a bit to say this morning about Donald Trump. Your response to that?
Well, I've said before today that, the watchword probably is one of frustration. I think there's a lot of frustration in America. I think that's part of the reason why Donald Trump is having success, is people are frustrated with the dysfunctionality of Washington, D.C., the lack of getting anything done, the constantly kicking the can down the road. And there's some frustration because of the discourse that's taking place, particularly on the Republican side. This is really a Republican problem, and it used to be that we didn't speak evil of our fellow Republicans, was the Ronald Reagan 11th commandment. And the last two election cycles, my gosh, it's just a fight and negative comments. And this year, it looks like to me, this last debate, we devolved to about as low as you can get. It was like I've characterized a junior high school food fight. And that's not what the public should want. And it shouldn't be what we deliver. We ought to have more respect for the office. We know that there are serious issues out there that need discussion and debate. And we ought to have serious answers to serious questions and give us some details and specifics. And I think that's the frustration that Mitt Romney is, I think, articulating here in this press conference today, which is probably a frustration that many people share with him. So I hope we can elevate the discussion and be respectful for the office, the highest office in the land that we're running for, and have the proper decorum and have, robust but honest, frank discussion with substance to it, and rather than just some of the rhetoric that I think has been unfortunate.
But is Mitt Romney right with what he says about Donald Trump?
Well, I don't know all about Donald Trump, and I know he's worth a lot more money than I am, and so I think as far as his business successes, some have been good and some not so good, I expect. But I would like to see a little more substance from Donald Trump on how he's going to do things, rather than just say it's going to be great. And but I would say the same thing to the other contenders too. We want to have specifics. We want to have details, and let's not devolve to that junior high school or third grade level. I mean, it's maybe it's even worse than junior high. We need to have significant discussion about significant issues.
Okay, but Governor, he's maybe not releasing any tax returns, and would you be calling upon him? I mean, you said that he's got more money than you do, but we don't know that until we actually kind of see the details here. Would you call upon him to release his tax return?
I think it would be in his best interest to do that. We've seen this before. I think that the American public would like to verify what his assets are, where he's spending his money. I think that does give us an insight into somebody's principles and values and character. So I think it will help Donald Trump if he would do that. There's no reason probably not to do it, but I don't think he cares, Mr. Trump, what I say. He probably is irritated a little bit by what Governor Romney says, but I think it would be in his best interest to do that, which was what the other candidates are doing, and he's promised to do it. So let's hope he finds a way to do it.
Have you endorsed a candidate yet?
I have not. I've been partial, as you know, to governors. And I'm disappointed that we didn't have more governors, because I think they come to the table with significant training, expertise, and understanding of what is required in the executive branch and running things and working to bring people together. I can tell you Governor Romney is a perfect example of a Republican governor having to get things done in a Democrat state and being forced as governor to bring people together. And that's a significant skill set. Heaven knows we'd like to see it in Washington, D.C., because we're so polarized there and divided, we don't get anything done. That's part of the frustration that the American people is exhibiting here today. So I haven't endorsed anybody. I like governors. I like Governor Kasich, but I like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, and even Donald Trump, to me, has some strengths. He has weaknesses, but he has strengths, as do all candidates.
What are Donald Trump's strengths?
He doesn't mind saying whatever comes to his mind, and sometimes that's a little refreshing. It comes unfiltered, and sometimes you think, did he really say that? And that's probably, for some, a refreshing attitude, and for others, a little off-putting. So it cuts both ways. He certainly has, I think, captured the fascination. His personality, bigger than life, you know, is something that's been, I think, a fascination as a populist in the country. And he certainly does not lack for self-confidence. We all should have the same kind of self-confidence as a Donald Trump. But sometimes it's a little bit blustery, and that's a little bit off-putting to me.
Governor, yesterday, a senator from California began sending some open letters to Senator Adams asking him not to move forward with the plan for the coal port in Oakland. In fact, essentially went some legislation trying to block it. Do you have any response to that?
Well, part of the problem we have, what's even causing the discussion, is because we have states on the West Coast or the left coast, from Oregon, Washington, California, they're saying, because we don't want coal, we're not going to let you come through our state and ship coal. And really, this is a commerce issue, and the federal government probably ought to be involved in making sure that commerce is regulated appropriately in this country. It's not just a Utah issue, Wyoming and others that want to ship a legal product, by the way, something that's certainly in demand in the marketplace out there, and yet we have somebody arbitrarily saying, well, we're not going to let your legal product be shipped out of our ports. If that was happening, as the free market would dictate, we would not have the issue before us. So that being said, you know, I think Utah, and particularly those involved in natural resource development and energy and coal, are saying, where can we find a place to export our goods to people who want it? And that's we want to make sure that whatever we do in Utah is done appropriately and legally, and that's part of the discussion. So conceptually, you know, I understand and I support, you know, the effort. We want to make sure we do it right, and we ought to have the cooperation of California to help us export rather than trying to block our ability to sell a legal product.
One of the points that Senator Hancock made was that coal is a dying industry because of the health risks or environmental risks, and that the local community should have a say on whether or not something that could potentially be dangerous comes through their community.
She illustrates the problem. Government should not be picking winners and losers. We are a free market, free enterprise, capitalistic society. That's what our country was founded on. That's how we should allow it to move forward. And because of that, we've become the wealthiest, healthiest nation in the history of the world. Most all the great inventions, innovations have come out of America. And for government to say, well, we know best, and we know time after time that they don't know best. For example, government stepping on the scales and saying, we want to have ethanol. Let's subsidize corn. And what we're finding now is that ethanol has a bigger carbon footprint. All it's done is raise the price of corn. It impacts the poultry market, the dairy market, our turkey industry in Utah, and it's raising the price of corn, hurting people in third world countries that are starving to death. So this was not really a great thing for the government to step into, well-intended as it may be. Let the market work. And when government says we know best, we know that the majority of the time it seems like they don't know best.
Governor, we heard some testimony in that hearing on that proposal yesterday from libertarian groups saying this proposal to lend the money is government taking from there, that it was reallocation of tax dollars to benefit the particular industry.
No, it's government trying to contravene what another government's trying to do to stop in the marketplace. That's the motivation behind it. And it's not saying this is the only product. We're not picking coal as a winner. We're just saying we need to have a place to ship coal from, or other products. And again, it's not just Utah. I mean, you can talk to Matt Mead in Wyoming and find the frustration where their industry and their economy is mostly related to energy, and particularly to coal. And you can imagine the frustration when they say, we've got a product, people want to buy it, we want to sell it, and yet we cannot find a place to export it off of the West Coast. You know, that's not right for the governments to stop that from happening. So what do you do is check, and what do we do to find checkmate and find a way to get around that?
How does giving money to private entity to develop a port help keep California out? I mean, it seems like you said, it seems like if the federal government's gonna be involved, then there are avenues, litigation possibly, or other avenues to keep them from blocking the port, but giving money to help finance the port doesn't seem like it actually does anything.
Well, I think the intent is to have an entity that acquires the port and has ownership, some controlling interest, and I think that intent would be for Utah to have a partial interest in this port. So it's not a matter of giving it to somebody else, it's a matter of the state buying equity and interest in a port so that they can control their own destiny in behalf of our industry needs here in the state of Utah. But it could be agricultural products as well as coal.
Right, Senator Adams made that point just a few minutes ago when he said that what we get, Utah gets, is control of the throughput. But I asked him if he was aware of any discussions that have been ongoing or even begun with the longshoremen or Teamsters who really control the throughput in a very practical way. And he said that he was sure that had occurred. Do you have any firsthand understanding of that?
Nope, I'm one that I understand the concept. Other people are kind of driving this issue, and I think we need to be careful, methodical, make sure we're doing this right, meaning we're following statute and law, make sure that we understand what the potential consequences of this are, what are the potential unintended consequences. But I understand the frustration, I understand the need to have a port where we can export our goods, and that's what's driving this, and this may be an option. There may be other options. I'm asking people, look, can we go to Texas? Is there some other way? What's the difference in the cost? You know, is there other ways to transport internationally besides barge and boat? You know, so we ought to look at all the options out there and be careful about what we do and how we spend our money.
Some people are saying the smart money, the professionals who move coal aren't putting $50 million into this thing. They're getting dumb money from Utah where they don't really understand moving coal. Would you comment?
Well, again, how can I comment on something that's just an accusation? We need to see, I guess, facts and figures. That's why there ought to be some analysis so we know what the cost is, I said, and what is the benefit. Clearly, there's somebody that's energized out to try to stop it from happening, and we certainly have at least an understanding that there are people outside of America that would like to, in fact, acquire some of our goods, which includes coal.
There are people who make, or used to be people anyway, who made a living doing this. Some of them made a lot of money. Those people aren't putting money in, or aren't putting the $50 million into this. What makes you think Utahns are smarter about the coal than the people who aren't putting the money in?
Well, we're pretty smart people here in Utah, I can tell you that. And we understand for the energy demands of America, and really for the world for that matter, that carbon-based fuels and or nuclear energy or some combination is going to be the base load needs for the next generation. The science and the math doesn't work out any other way. So certainly we're trying to transition to cleaner fuels, but coal is still a big part of our portfolio, as is now natural gas, which is transitioning. Some of the reasons we don't have investment in coal is because it's becoming so difficult, in fact, to get a coal mine. Is still probably the cheapest energy source we have per kilowatt hour for the extraction and the transportation and the, in fact, burning and converting it into electricity. I expect it will be a viable product. There clearly is movement against it, some of it coming from this administration on what we hear people out there calling the war on coal. Truth of the matter is the science dictates what's going to happen. We know that the public wants sustainable energy. We know they want it affordable, and we know they want it cleaner. And the marketplace will, in fact, I think, give that. And we see that happening now. More wind, more solar, more natural gas, and less coal. But that's a transition period of time that will take place.
A different topic. You have been for capital punishment. What's your reaction? What will be your reaction if the legislature bans capital punishment?
Well, I am for capital punishment, but I would characterize my support with one that it should be done very rarely, and for just the most heinous of crimes. And that's what Utah's reflected. We have not had only 7 executions since 1976, when capital punishment was reinstated. So we've not done it very often. And again, I don't know that I believe it's any kind of a deterrent necessarily, but I do believe that some crimes warrant just taking their life. That being said, my concern about capital punishment is the length of time. I mean, it averages, 25 or 26 years from the time that a person is found guilty the first time and charged till we have execution. And I don't think that's good. I think there is a legitimate argument that justice delayed is justice denied, and there is not closure for the incident, for the families and the victims, as well as the perpetrators' families and those that care about that individual. So the delay is troublesome, and we ought to streamline it at least. We ought to make sure we do this in a timely fashion. And other than that, I think it becomes troublesome.
If the bill passed though, would you sign it, or would you veto it?
I haven't made that determination yet. I come down on the side of capital punishment for extreme cases, rare. But I will analyze it and see what the arguments are, for and against. I know it's very expensive for capital punishment, and just for the taxpayers' benefit, it may be life without parole is a good argument. We're going to save the taxpayers' dollars and have closure sooner for the victims and their families and loved ones and the community, as well as the perpetrator's family and friends. So you get some closure sooner, save taxpayers money. I think that's a legitimate argument.
The legislative budget leaders have released some of the numbers, and it looks like they're proposing $440 million for education.
Hey!
There you go. Yeah, how do you spell that?
H-E-Y, H-E-Y.
No, I wanted your reaction. I guess I got it. Have you had further discussions with them? Are you pleased with the number that they've come up with?
I've talked with them as recently as yesterday, and on a couple of different occasions, and last evening again. And as everybody knows, education is my top budget priority. We've tried to give the resources as we're able to education to make sure that we give them the tools, the teachers, the principals, the superintendents, that are necessary to, in fact, educate a growing population. We have unique challenges in Utah. As I've said many times, this is a cliche, you should have this in your file. It isn't all about the money, but it's some about the money. And we're getting better returns on our dollars than about any place in America today. So if you like what's happening, hug a teacher. Tell them thanks. Principals are doing a great job of managing the resources, superintendents, and our local school board people, which, again, kind of unsung heroes, elected by the people, trying to determine what is necessary in their respective regions of the state. We have 41 of them. And they're finding that, what we do in one, we don't necessarily do in the other. Some slight differences, different populations, different cultures that they need to address. So we have a unique challenge, and I'm just so pleased that we're addressing the challenge and raising the bar. Again, if you haven't got the news, our graduation rates are up 9% since I've been in office, from 75 to 84. That's not enough to rest on and say it's good, but it's certainly a significant in the right direction. Our NAEP scores for 8th grade, we're 16th in math, we're 10th in reading language arts, we're 7th in science. We have a significant increase in our minorities test scores. So our minorities are raising their scores, and their achievement is up. We're changing the culture when it comes to education, making it a priority. The legislature is jumping in with both feet and saying, yeah, let's help. And we ought to thank the legislature for recognizing the need. And for me, it's always been a focus on the economy. You cannot have long-term sustained economic growth if you don't have an educated population. And our labor force is becoming more and more educated, having more and more skills. More people now are leaving high school and going on to college. We've had the largest jump of any state in America this past year, which is part of our 66 by 2020 goal. It's resonating. People are understanding you've got to go on to post-high school education to get the skills necessary to compete in what is now a global marketplace. So yeah, I'm pleased. I'm grateful. And we can do more, and we will do more as we continue to go down this road of education excellence in the state of Utah.
On that same subject, there are also several bills that are pulling money out of the education fund for more corporate tax breaks, including one bill which, until the lawmakers pulled it back, actually would have taken out $138 million annually to give to some of the largest corporations like Rio Tinto. Is that appropriate to do where Utah's education funding levels are already so low?
You know, it's a delicate balance. You know, what we have for tax policy and our intent to empower the private sector. It's tax policy, it's regulation reform, it's having a skilled labor force, it's having a business-friendly environment where people feel like they can come here and invest their capital, create a business, and have success by becoming profitable or increasing market share. That's how the market works. And we're doing it better in Utah, according to Forbes magazine, than any state in America today. It's not just Forbes. I mean, it's Polina Corporate. It's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I mean, people are recognizing Utah is the business-friendly climate. So again, it's a motor. It's like how much oxygen compared to how much petrol. We do have our spark plugs all working and connecting. Is the carburetor cleaned up? You know, is it all in sync? And we're doing a very good job right now of making sure it's all in sync and growing. So yeah, I'm always a little careful about what we do to adjust things. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of a thing. And but that's a delicate balance, and we're doing very well right now. I think we all know we're doing we're the best economy in America today.
To that end, Governor, the state of Oregon just increased their minimum wage to above $14 an hour. You've been on the record more than once about saying that this is really an education issue, not a minimum wage issue. That if we educate our people, then boats float and all of that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what is this going to mean for Oregon versus Utah in terms of the numbers that are going to be seen?
Seemed like they tried that in San Francisco too. I don't know if they went to $20 or something. And you know, again, I'm a free market guy, and either you believe in the market or you don't. I mean, I believe that we ought to allow the market to work. And you'll find that people around here are all getting paid above our minimum wage. And, you know, artificially inflating it, as the studies have been shown, that particularly those who can least afford it, minorities, young people, teenagers, unemployment increases. And so there's really not a net gain. The cost of $14 an hour means you've got to pass on the cost to the hamburger, to the product that you're selling, the service you're giving. It just increases the cost. And so we're paying more, but now we have to pay more for the product. So I don't know that that's the right way to do it. I would much prefer that we fill our unemployment ranks with more educated people. We in Utah are doing very well. Our unemployment rate is 3.5%, and I think it's going to be there, maybe going to drop some. We'll wait for the Department of Labor statistics to come out. I think they come out maybe tomorrow. But 3.5%, for most people, that's full employment. And yet we have hundreds, thousands of jobs going wanting out there. Why? Because we don't have anybody with the skills to take on that responsibility. So we just need to make sure that the labor has the skills necessary that aligns up with the demands of the marketplace, and we can reduce our unemployment and keep it low. There's always change, and I don't know that you can ever, like say, 3.5% for most people is full employment. But the best way to do it is skills and training, expand the market, create wealth, create jobs, give opportunity, give labor the skills necessary to compete, and the economy will hum along, just like we're doing here in Utah.
Last question. There's a bill for attempting to do away with non-compete clauses in the business environment. What's your thoughts about that?
You know, it's a difficult issue because I think there's legitimate concerns on probably all sides of this issue. A person that has skills, we just talked about that, should have the right to go out and sell their skills to whoever's the highest bidder or whatever they think attracts them. It's kind of being like an independent agent, you know, to be able to go out and say, you have a job offer, I want to be able to take it. Non-compete clauses can inhibit that ability. At the same time, businesses say, we're investing in people, we have proprietary information, intellectual property, trade secrets. We don't think it's right for you to come here and have us train you, give you this information, then you go out and take the information we've developed and use it to compete against our company. So I understand both sides of the issue. I believe that what we're doing and trying to bring everybody together, we've asked all the stakeholders to come together, and we've been in significant discussion over the last 2 or 3 days. I would be very concerned if we did anything that would send a message to the marketplace that we're not business friendly, particularly when we've got everything working so well. But I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to come together on this and find the right point to protect the businesses for their proprietary, their trade secrets, et cetera, and yet still allow people that have skills to sell their skills on the marketplace and not be inhibited by some untoward, inappropriate non-compete clause.
If I'm hearing you, you're personally involved in this.
We're working to bring people together, which is what the governor always does. We try to bring people together and have discussion, open dialogue, understanding. And if we all understand the issues, I think pros and cons, we'll probably come together on the right place, the middle ground that resolves the issues and develops good policy.
Have you sat in meetings?
I have, not only have I sat in meetings with leadership, but I've also had people involved in the discussions representing our Office of Economic Development, with people from the Chambers of Commerce, others. There's some division out there in the marketplace about what is the right policy. There's been amendments to the bill, that people are debating, discussing them. I'm hopeful that we're going to come together on this issue because it's an important one on both sides.
We've got a meeting at 2 p.m. on this very issue, so we gotta go. Thank you. What else are you spending time on the last few days?
Just hoping, really, it's for me, it's at this point the budget. It's filling in those little cracks, and we have a little excess monies. And where do you put it? Where do you prioritize? And I'm pleased to hear from you, Robert, that $440 million for education, which is good, and that's a healthy amount, which builds on what we've done, the $1.326 billion we've done the last 4 years. It's nice to have another over $400 million put into education. All right, thank you all.
Big news day today, Governor. What was the best news you got?
My wife still loves me.